Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Autism Rocks and Rolls podcast hijack series. Today, I have with me Miss Kerry Blaser. Kerry, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm great. How you doing?
Awesome. Why don't you take her away?
Hi, I'm Kelly Blaser. I'm a mother, a shaman, and an author. My book is My Inner Heroine, Exploring Feminine Pain. So first, I'm going to get into my background and my story and everything. I was born in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I have one older brother who's a year and a half older. And both of my parents came from traumatic families. Like my mom was engaged 4 times, and my dad's parents got a divorce in the 50s and then got married again. So they had their challenges. My mom was an alcoholic. My dad was a workaholic. We moved to Europe for a few years pretty quickly after I was born, and then moved to Southern California. And they quickly got a divorce, and things went on from there. It was hard. It was a challenging time in the mid 70s. I from the divorce, I rejected myself profoundly, and had a lot of anxiety and live my life like that. I got a job, even though it was an affluent town, and my dad made a lot of money, and I got a job at 12, other job at 14, bought my own car, went off to college, and my dad paid for some, but I also paid for some. And I got married to a man, and I was had a lot of fears, lots of fears. And we ended up having a son with mild autism. And it was hard. It was hard because we didn't understand it. And the school system, this was like my son started school in 2003, and people didn't understand like the cause of autism. Like I was told in like 98 to let my son cry it out in the middle of the night. And now I'm learning that like autism, one of the causes of autism is anxiety in the mother. And I also learning now that like I'm physiologically designed um to soothe his emotions, to help him regulate his emotions, and yet I was taught to let him scream and cry until he gets so exhausted that he falls back asleep. So I would say like, I just keep getting caught up on that. It was very difficult. And then we didn't understand how he and I both had a lot of childhood trauma, how that was negatively impacting our kids. And we just, put him in school, and then schools didn't have a great method for it to help him. And he's so smart and so perceptive and so sensitive. And then he got aggressive, and then, oh, medicate him. And, it was always, he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong. And now I understand, how wrong I was and how much I didn't understand about parenting, and about how my inability to process my emotions were so negatively impacting my son. And I have two daughters too, and there's, trauma there as well. Like my youngest daughter has an eating disorder, and what we learned is when you have one child with autism, then you're much more likely to have another child with an eating disorder. And so yeah, I mean he's doing really well now. He's Eagle Scout and second degree black belt in taekwondo. So, I worked really hard to give him as many opportunities as I could, but I'm just like there's so much I didn't understand as a parent with a child with autism, and then the school district as well. Like he's so smart, and end up putting him in a special needs school, and he's an Eagle Scout. Like, it just like, it doesn't add up, but that's he's doing really well now. Now he's 27 and my daughter's in their 20s. So that's kind of my background story. And then the next question, what advice would you give to others who have a son with autism? And I would say, is really focus on self-love techniques, focus on processing your emotions, and that as a parent, can I regulate my own emotions so I can help my children regulate their emotions? I mean, that I would say, as I brought up earlier, is something I didn't know how to do, and I know really negatively, impacted my kids. And now, he's doing great now. It's just it was a long road. It was a really long road. Um, I would ensure that he has enough time outdoors to explore, enough time supported that he has like kind of like quiet solitude meditation time, time to process, time to accept how perceptive he is. Like my son, extraordinarily perceptive. Like in kindergarten, he could do a math problem no one else could do. And then they told him, "We'll keep him home for another year." I'm like, "But he's so smart." "Yeah, but he's aggressive." I'm like, "But what am I, give him medication, Kerry." And I would say that like for schooling, if the mother can stay home and they can homeschool so the child can have, outdoors time and grounding time, hands in the dirt time, climbing time. These are all things that my son really needed, but he had to go sit still in school, and that was really hard for him. So if you could, I would say that would be really great. Oh, and then my son's taekwondo journey. Yeah. So he started taekwondo when he was 5, and his dad's Israeli. And so practiced Krav Maga in the military and such. And then he ended up starting doing taekwondo. But the structure and the support, and then my daughter's like, he's a black belt. My daughters are both red belts. And so they all got into it. I tried it, but it wasn't for me, but I supported them all in doing it. And I would say that the two best things I ever did for my son were Boy Scouts and Taekwondo because of the structure, because of the confidence and self-belief that he grew. He ended up becoming an instructor as well, and breaking boards. And I think he broke a cement block one time. Like it was just so much confidence building and self-belief building, and he just loved it. Um, what does having a son with autism mean to me? It brought a special, like, very innocent, perceptive mirror to my emotional pain and my challenges. Having a child that sees everything and that, is seeing his mom. Like, I attempted suicide 6 years ago, and he was in the house. And so, and I remember it was after that we had a conversation. I did, through my healing work, I did like 5 medicine journeys. And after the second one, during the second one, I could see that I don't love myself. And I came home and I asked him, I said, do you love yourself? He's like, no. I'm like, well, me neither. Do you feel my love? He's like, no. I'm like, okay, then I'm going to ask you every day, what can I do today so that you feel my love? And it was such a huge wake up call to have my son, like, just, we had this whole conversation and we're both crying about how I hadn't taught my son to love himself because I didn't know how to do it myself. And that's generational trauma. And I believe that kids with autism, people with autism, do hold up a special mirror to those of us who haven't processed our emotional pain, their perceptive gifts, their compassionate gifts. I mean, people one time calls him like a wise kind of silverback gorilla because he could just see and perceive like a wise solution to problems and see into things in a way that other people couldn't. And he's at my house, seeing his mom hate herself and on medications and attempt suicide. And it was just like, it's very humbling and thought-provoking and clarifying to have a child with autism. Okay, so based on your observations, how does your son's brain operate? Um, it's very much, this is happening, this is not happening. This is going on, this is like kind of, I might say black and white, but because the way I perceive it, people with autism are more perceptive, so they're getting much more information. And so for them to explain the nuance, it's like there's so many of us, like myself included, we're so out of alignment with who I am as a woman, my femininity, my ability to act from my feminine instincts, my intuition, my compassion, my forgiveness, creativity, all of that was like just repressed and stifled because of my childhood trauma. But then to have a son who's so perceptive and intuitive and psychic and and just like clear as day saw my problems. It was like, oh, I need to address, yeah, I need to address that. And so I would say that is how like they see so much. So it's like helpful for me, the black and white, and not even getting into the nuance because for me, I needed that black and white to show me how far out of alignment I was. So I would say, and I don't really know how to describe that in terms of how the brain operates, but that's I would say is he gets the nuance, but there's just so much challenge that the clear communication is what comes out. So say that's those are my answers. If you'd like me to elaborate or yeah.
Well, I got some more for you.
Okay.
But what a moving story. Thank you again for coming on. It really means a lot to me you're on here today. But you talked about you moved to Europe. Do you want to tell me what you remember? Believe me, it's been a
Mhm.
while, so I if you don't remember much, totally understand. What are the similarities and differences that are from Europe to America?
Oh, I would say because I moved back when I was like 4, almost 5. I don't really remember anything. I wish I could tell you. Like this painting is from Europe. There's a couple pictures I have, but one thing my mom would tell me is that my mom would ride us on the bike everywhere, where she wouldn't, do that in America, would be in a car. So in Europe, she would, we'd get us ready in the morning and have me like in the front and my brother in the back, and then she would, ride us around and that we would have our day together via a bike and not a car. And so I would say that's one thing she told me that, is quite different than America. Yeah.
That sounds a lot more simpler than America. Sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
America.
yeah.
Maybe not God bless USA, but still, in retrospect, God bless USA. But
Yeah.
get to more of a serious side here. You're talking about rejecting yourself. How did you get out of that phase of I can actually self-love myself and I don't have to think of myself as this monster in the mirror?
Yeah. Well, my mom helped me with that. My mom passed away on my 45th birthday. And 3 weeks, she had moved to Florida about 7 years prior when my youngest was 5. I'm like, Mom, where are you going? She's like, but I want to have retirement. I'm like, okay. So the kids and I went out there, and that was fun for us. But then she got really sick. And as an alcoholic, she developed brain damage from the alcoholism, and her ability to swallow was compromised. And once that goes away, it doesn't come back. So I went out there to Florida and got her, brought her back to California so she could see her family before she passed away. And then early in the morning on my birthday, on my 10 years ago, 40th birthday, I got a phone call from the hospital and they told me that she had passed. And I said, okay. And then I went right back to sleep and she came to me in a dream and she thanked me for bringing her back, for honoring her. And she looked beautiful. Like she was all like, I hate makeup, but she was all about the makeup and the hair and the clothes. And she just looked like the most beautiful version of my mom. And she was so grateful for all that I did and that now is a time for me to be the matriarch of the family. And so she had never gotten over the alcoholism. And so, being in her as the matriarch of the family, we're all in her, kind of alcoholic heart, so to speak, with all of her emotional pain. So now that she had passed, and I'm like allergic to alcohol, I get hives. Then after I woke up in the morning, I remember the dream, and I was like, okay, my intuition said it's time to accept my psychic gifts, and it's time to heal from my childhood trauma. And that's when I really learn to surf the waves of life. I started seeing shamans and other healers and learning to kind of go into my pain and come out of my pain because I had had 30. Yeah, it went away about 5 years ago. 35 years of debilitating lower back pain that started when I was 15. That's my femininity, my womb, my sacrum. And so it was like screaming at me for that whole time, and I wasn't able to listen. And so, yeah, it was a lot. I can say it was a lot.
I can imagine. But you were talking about being allergic. Do you think having that allergy to alcohol, in a sense, is almost a blessing because you don't
Very
have to
much.
deal with, oh, my mom was an alcoholic. I'm gonna drink a sip, and then next thing you know, all I'm addicted to is Budweiser.
Right. Well, I was never, I mean, like in college and everything, I drank some in college, but I was never really into drinking. I was more into marijuana. And then when I was around 40, I had a glass of wine and I got hives. And so it kind of like, yes, protected me. And so then I started healing. And then 6 years ago, my youngest, who has an eating disorder, blamed me for her eating disorder. And I went home and I internalized that on the way home, and everything got really dark on the way home. And when I got home, my brain told me that my kids would be better off with a dead mother than a live one. And so I took all the trazodone, Klonopin, Soma, like, my nervous system was so frazzled from so much emotional pain that I didn't know how to process. And I didn't even remember like who it was with. Like it was just so bad. And so I took everything. I went upstairs. I went to sleep immediately. Like it was like the only time in my life I just like let go. And then my older daughter found me the next morning and saved me. And then after that, I really kind of came back, Kerry 2.0, and really figured it out. And I had to. I had my son in my house and couldn't even, he was 20 years old and couldn't even have a job yet because he's still having such a hard time. And then my youngest got out of rehab. She lived with her dad for about a month, but that didn't work out. She came to live with me. So then there I was, no family support with two kids with special needs, and I'm recovering from a suicide attempt. And then my stepfather calls me and he tells me that he has idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and that's a death sentence. And so I didn't even tell him about my suicide attempt. And that summer, I took care of him, took care of my kids, and took my ex-husband back to court because he wouldn't pay for child support. And then I won at court on a Friday, and then the next day was my stepfather's funeral. And I would like that's my life, like all just crazy ups and downs. And so through my healing work, I figured out why is my like what like why is my life like what? And I figured out that well I read other people's work. I say like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. David R. Hawkins, and that we all have souls, we all have energy bodies. And now physicists can prove that we all have energy bodies. And so our souls or our energy bodies plan our lives based on the laws of physics. And so I did a deep dive into that over the past like 5 years to understand why my soul would plan so much pain in my life. And so that's kind of the work that I did through my healing work, through my self-reflection work. And I use psychology like Carl Jung and shamanism, my intuition and mysticism and laws of physics and neuroscience to be like, why is my life such? And so that's, been the crux of my work.
Right. You were talking about too, you survived suicide. I'm happy as, I don't want to say a suicide survivor, but as a person who didn't want to go out into public for the longest time because I thought my life would be so much more easier. I'm happy you're here with us today. I really, really am. But what would you say some advice would be for maybe, okay, they're just scrolling around because it's their last minutes of life. They're contemplating suicide too. What advice would you give to them? What would you say to Johnny, who's in the bathtub right now, just watching television, and
Mm.
then next thing you know, he's going to put a gun to his head?
In that moment, I would say breathe, breathe. Find one thing to be grateful for. One thing. Are you grateful for the tree outside? Are you grateful for the bird? Are you grateful for the ground? Are you grateful for the rain? Find one thing to be grateful for and breathe. And that's where you start. And so in my book, My Inner Heroine, Exploring Feminine Pain, two of the men that I attracted into my personal life are decorated fire academy instructors. And so I spent a lot of time like researching the mental health crisis inside the fire department, inside of, the first responders. And so the way I've written my self-love strategies are to try to like simple, like what can they use in the back of a fire truck, right? Or in a police car. So the what I said that define the gratitude, just like one thing to be grateful for, it starts what I call my appreciate, learn, forgive equals ego death process. So our souls or energy bodies plan our lives based on our wounds for self-improvement opportunities. Like I had to accept that if I want Mount Everest sized wisdom, which is what I want, I had to take on Mount Everest sized wounds. Okay, because our energy has to fluctuate between lower vibrating emotions like shame, guilt, and fear, and higher vibrating emotions like love, compassion, and enlightenment. And it's in that fluctuation of the energy between the two, the surfing the waves of life, that breathes life into the energy. So if you're in that bathtub and that gun's out, find one thing to be grateful for. And know that when you learn how to transform your wounds into wisdom, you're going to gain the momentum propulsion from that downhill to climb your next mountain. Just like if you want to climb Mount Everest, you got to do a lot of work ahead of time. Okay, so be grateful for the challenges in your life because your soul planned it by design to give you an opportunity to unearth more wisdom out of your subconscious, more self-belief like I did. I mean, I needed my stepfather being, on his death's doorstep, two kids with special needs, recovering from a suicide attempt, having to go to court to find my self-belief. Like I needed that much challenge to go, I got this, you know? And that's what we come here as the soul having a human experience. We don't come here to coast. We come here to expand our consciousness, to understand ourselves, to have more gifts and more knowledge and more wisdom. And all of that is a lot of really hard work. And also, if you can kind of push yourself to the point where you're like, this is so gnarly, I don't even know if I can make it, you are an old soul, ambitious soul, searching for like bounds of new consciousness. And that's what I had to accept about myself. Like, I needed to hate myself so profoundly, to let go so profoundly, to come back, Kerry 2.0, and do everything that I'm doing. And so it's a challenge, but the gratitude, it's a heart opener. It'll ground you in your body. It'll kind of breathe some life into you because that would say the first step. Then learn your lessons, self-reflect. Ask yourself, what wisdom can I learn inside this wound? What is this challenge meant to teach me? And then forgiveness naturally follows after that. So I'd say the appreciate, learn, forgive is instrumental. And there's no regret and remorse and appreciate, learn, forgive because our souls plan everything for our benefit, just for us to see ourselves, for self-improvement opportunities. So where's the regret and the remorse? So it helps me let go of that too.
Well, I'm glad, as if I may promote myself real quickly. You taught me a fire, your husband being a fire captain. This is just information for your fire captain
Mhm.
of a husband. I actually talk to emergency workers. We do training for emergency workers.
Mhm.
And down the line, if there comes an opportunity, man, I'm more than happy to speak for him and his fire department team to learn about what to do if they go on to a scenario with someone who is on the autism spectrum, like your son. Just some for the future.
Mhm.
Just some for the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And like, autism, the way it displays in women and then in men is different. And then if you're mild or more advanced, it can, because people say, like, my son's very high functioning. So then he gets like, well, that's not you. What do you mean it's like he's claiming a disability he doesn't have a right to or something, and he gets judged for it. So it's definitely it's a spectrum. Yeah.
Right. Well, let me ask you this too, because your son's journey sounds very similar to mine. There was a point
Mhm.
where I was doing three extracurricular activities. It was
Yeah.
baseball, Boy Scouts, and
Mhm.
Taekwondo. So
Oh
he
wow,
actually
yeah.
matches two out of the three extracurricular activities. But did you ever put him in something where you could just tell this isn't his thing?
Yeah, I mean, like softball, like t-ball at 5. Oh, anybody can do it. Anybody can, and it was very poorly run. So this whole anybody can do it thing, I was like, okay, stop. So I would say he didn't, team sports weren't great for him. So Taekwondo was really great for him. Not that, I mean, he did, soccer worked out and he liked it, but it wasn't where he really thrived because like paying attention to everybody else and then himself and that was a challenge. Like he was just perceiving so much. And so for him to be able to focus on just his own improvement in Taekwondo was and then he also did rock climbing. So my kids, I guess their two favorites were rock climbing and Taekwondo. They loved all that.
Eh, I'm not a big fan of rock climbing because I have very sensitive feet and stepping
Oh.
on the rocks on
Mhm.
that it's like very
Yeah.
painful. But I like the creek. I like the rocks at my grandmother's creek, so go figure. Very quirky and unique. But anyway, have you ever asked your son what he likes about the rock climbing exactly?
Oh, shoot, it's been a while since they did it. I the height, the danger, and it is fun. Like my, so at Boy Scouts, my son would always lose his fire and knife chits because he just like was obsessed with fire and knives. So, he's a boy. So the danger of climbing the rocks and then beating his sisters and, the whole thing. It's
All right, I have
involved.
to ask too. Does your son have a favorite Taekwondo kick, punch, stance? What's his favorite thing to do? Like spar? Does he like to do front kicks, a full?
Spar. I think spar. It's been a while, but spar. Definitely he likes to spar.
For some reason, I always like the front kicks. Every time
Oh
he did
yeah?
a front kick, I was extremely excited. I think because it's three things: basic,
Mm. Mm.
simple, effective.
Yeah. 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 No, it's been, yeah, because he had like he has serious fine motor skill delay, so coordination, is hard for him. And so, but I knew, so a couple years ago, he moved to Minnesota with his friends. And then I was talking to him and he told me that he was doing a little art project. And I told him like, you're doing so well that you're not playing video games and you're doing arts and crafts for fun. You're like, I'm like, go Ethan. Like he was, he had settled in his nervous system so much by, leaving home and living with his friends because it was hard at home, really hard at home, that he could just, his fine motor skills picked up. He could sit and focus, and that's what was the real challenge. Like when he was, in school as a kid, is that, we were all learning the home life problems were impacting at school and then the school challenges. It was just like, it was not set up for his success on multiple fronts.
Right. I think sometimes we all can work on the school system with special education. There's always room for improvement on that.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
anyway, Kerry, thank you for your time today. I hope you had a blast. I know I did.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.